If you were going to buy a new pair of monitors, which would you choose? Let's talk about Piracy. Thanks, shit for brains. What is your absolute favourite theme or soundtrack? Do you know about the Mr. Bill podcast? Have you ever thought about making your own record label? Now you've seen Chemical Brothers live, who's still on your live show bucket list? You think you know someone, then they drop a Chris Moyles bombshell and the world shifts. I did enjoy Chemical Brothers and... No, hang on. Hey guys, welcome to the Kane audio vlog. It's Friday, it's time for another Ask Me Anything. Usual rules apply, comment anything you want below this video and I'll get back to you in next week's video. Before I get on to last week's video though, is there anything I need to cover in house admin? Not much has happened. I've been working on some tracks for Universal again. As usual, not much I can say about that until we're further down the line. I will mention those as they come out. I did some a few months ago actually, and they came out on an album called Clubland 12, so feel free to look that up. What else have I been doing? Do you know what? I've still been installing stuff onto the new iMac. Still having some issues because it's Catalina. So Steinberg Wavelab I've binned because they want me to spend a fortune. I always had issues with Steinberg and I will always say this publicly. Steinberg on the very first version of Wavelab, whenever that was that I bought, if you wanted to save as MP3 you had to pay them an extra, I can't remember what it was, $50 or something, just to be able to export as MP3. And that always got my back up because I always felt like, well, how come you can export as MP3 on almost every other bit of software out there apart from yours and you have to pay extra? That always got my back up. They always were useless at support. And once again, whatever version of Wavelab I had wasn't running on Catalina. So I contacted support to see if there was either a workaround or an update or whatever. And that was probably 3 weeks ago. Haven't heard a word back. So bye-bye Steinberg Wavelab. I know I had similar issues when I was back in the day using Cubase and Nuendo years ago, so I'm done with Steinberg. That's gone. So yeah, that's that. What else? Oh, but on the flip side of that, huge shout out to the guys at Isotope. First of all, they were kind enough to upgrade some of my packages free of charge and whatever, and they've done fantastic. Not only that, they have talked me through step by step. We still haven't got it working yet, but they've talked me through step by step on how to bypass one of the installers and get a bit of a fiddly workaround to be able to get one of the apps to work on Catalina that isn't quite Catalina ready yet. They've gone beyond the mark that you'd expect any decent support devs to go. So huge shout out to Isotope. So yeah, if you guys are thinking of buying new VSTs or whatever, look at Isotope because I'm telling you now, you get support. So I will definitely give them a shout out. Other than that, what else have I done? Been to the dentist. I'm sure that's not what you want to hear about. So I think that is it for house admin. What have we got coming up? I feel like I'm only just now getting back into the swing of things with a new computer. It's all very weird. What have we got coming up? We've got Christmas coming up. I haven't looked at how the AMAs are going to pan out over there. Let's have a very quick look. Doesn't look like anything's going to interfere necessarily because Christmas and New Year are on a Wednesday. So yeah, the AMA will be on the 27th. So that's fine. We'll have a nice little cozy Christmas. Let's do a little Christmas special. I might have even though I don't drink alcohol, I might have a little glass of Baileys or something and do an AMA. So yeah, maybe if you've got some Christmas related questions, I'll see if I can do something for that. And yeah, I'm still yet to get a Christmas jumper. As I am now officially a dad this year, I feel like I need to be wearing a Christmas jumper every Christmas now. It's my duty to mankind. So there we go. Anyway, let's move on and have a look at last week's questions. So this would have been Ask Me Anything 79. Gold Toast. Hey Dom, I got a random video of yours recommended to me in my YouTube feed. So this is the second video I've ever watched of yours. So in which case, high five to you. So excuse me if this question has been answered before, but I've been on the lookout for a new pair of monitors. Been having my eye on the Genelec 8050Bs, but I've also considered some other speakers such as the Dynaudio 48s or the Neumann KH310s. Also read good things about the event Opals, which I see you have. So now, finally my question. If you were going to buy a new pair of monitors, which would you choose? Is there any other monitor I should consider? As a quick side note, I make electronic music, mostly in the progressive house style, the old school style, not the big room crap. High five for that as well then. Well, first of all, I think you're looking at a good range of monitors there. I think they're kind of all industry standard-ish for home to small studios. So I have the event Opals. Clearly I'm going to be slightly biased. One thing I will say about the Genelecs, I know I'm probably different to other people here because I know loads of people who have the Genelecs and they love the Genelecs and swear by them, so I'm not taking anything away from that. For me personally, I always kind of felt like the Genelecs were a bit too nice. They had a habit of the low end was just a bit too well, nice is the only word I can think of. They're a bit too warm and a bit too comfortable. And then the high end, there was never really that open transparency in the tops. So everything, again, I'm just going to use the word nice over and over again. I just felt everything was just a bit too nice, a bit too present and a bit too beautiful and pretty. And I moved from Genelecs to Focals, and where Focals were, in hindsight, kind of lacking a little bit in low end, the high end was just so raw and crisp. It was a huge shock to go from Genelecs to Focals. So actually that might maybe add some Focals, the twin 6Bs, or what are the new 6B ones, the Beryllium series? Are they the trios, I think, or something? If I know there's a few in that sort of area, and they've brought a couple of new models out now. Whatever the Focals are in that price range, though, in the similar to like the event Opals and that, I would probably consider those as well in the mix. So for me personally, Genelecs I'd probably take out the equation. I mean, look, so many people have them, so they must be good. But I just felt like they hid too many errors. So that was my personal view. Dynaudios are great. They're solid. They're not too bright, not too dull. They're good, solid speakers. Neumanns I've not heard in action up against others. I've heard them on their own and thought they sounded great. If I remember rightly, there was something, I wouldn't say wrong with the low end, but it was something that didn't quite work for me. I can't remember what that was. In fact, now I think about it, that studio might have been Adams. No, they were Neumann's. I can't remember. Right, so I'm not going to say anything on the Neumanns just in case I'm wrong there. Event Opals. So I really like the Event Opals, but I also feel like there's something untoward with the low end as well. And I've never worked out whether it's the room or the speaker or my ear that's the issue. So again, I can never put my finger on it. But I feel like sometimes the low end really shines through on the opals, and then sometimes they're just not quite, it's not quite as transparent. And I think it's something to do with the harmonics of subs, but I can't put my finger on it. For 99% of situations, though, they're bang on the money. So that's my view. So as to which ones I would have, I honestly don't know, but I would say the opals, opals and focals would be my top two. I'd probably throw the Dynaudios in the mix just to compare. So I would look for, if I was you, again, it all depends on where you live and what you've got nearby. But look, if you're spending that kind of money on a set of monitors, you need to know that you're getting your money's worth and you're making the right choice. So I always figure, like I've always said to friends of mine, if you're buying a car, if you're into cars, if you're a car enthusiast like myself, I drove 300 miles to go and get my car second hand, because it was a fairly rare car and it was the exact spec, whatever. It's worth travelling that distance to go for. The same goes for monitor speakers. You're with them for life, or a long time at least. And you're putting some serious money into something, and you're then putting some serious trust into these things afterwards. So I think they're worth travelling for. But depending on where you live, I would certainly look for a decent studio equipment store that has a good listening room where you can put up the opals, the focals, and the Dynaudios together and sort of ABC them together. If they only have one of them or two of them in stock or something like that, I suggest you phone around and explain to another shop the situation that you want to compare, and ask if you can borrow them for 24 hours. Some shops will, some shops won't. I guess maybe I'm kind of lucky being somewhat of an established name, so maybe they do that to me as a favour. I honestly don't know, but I have borrowed speakers from shops before, and I don't know how I've managed to do that now I think about it, but I have, so it's a possibility. I'd look into it. So there we go. Cheers, you're welcome. Zombo, thank you, Dom. I feel a rant incoming. Let's talk about piracy, how it affects the music production industry, and some exception that you think are okay to do. Piracy will always happen. It always has happened and it always will happen. Let's get that straight from the very start. It's also worth mentioning digital piracy is not that much different to any other form of piracy, in that when I was a kid, I had a little ghetto blaster. In fact, it was my sister's ghetto blaster playing the radio, and there was a cassette deck in there, and you'd always have a blank cassette, pause record, and you'd listen to the radio, and as soon as a song you liked came on the radio, quick unpause and start recording that song, and you'd build up, mixtapes and whatever, compilation tapes of tracks that were on the radio that you loved. That was piracy in its most basic form that I was doing as a kid unknowingly. I didn't know the laws or whatever. It was just, that's what we did. We recorded songs we liked. So I don't think that killed the CD industry. I do think it's slightly different in terms of accessibility for stuff online. Back then, if you wanted a particular song you liked, it either had to be on the radio, and even when it was on the radio, you then had to wait all day for it to come on to the radio, or you'd keep requesting it, I don't know, whatever, So it was definitely easier to not pirate as in if you had a, a Woolworths nearby, you could get whatever song you wanted in the bargain bin or whatever. It was pretty easy to go and get. Obviously now most of us don't even go to shops these days, let alone music shops. So, but then again, we've got iTunes, Apple Music, whatever, Google Play, whatever. All of these things are on our phones ready to buy, so it should be very easy. So there's kind of no excuse for piracy. However, I will also say that I've definitely pirated stuff, like movies when I own them on disc and I just want them on my phone or whatever. It's easier to just download it illegally and have it on my phone, even though I bought it on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. I tend not to pirate stuff that I haven't owned or whatever because mostly because I actually enjoy buying the Blu-ray or going to the cinema or whatever. And also I refuse to watch cam footage of a film, I don't even get why people do that. That's just retarded. Yeah, right. So, however, there are things that I pirate as well, like UFC sometimes, weirdly, even though I pay for UFC Fight Pass and I pay for BT Sport, the app, and UFC have decided that the main events, for the big events, they put on BT Sport exclusively, so they'll black it out on UFC Fight Pass, even though I pay for UFC Fight Pass, but I get all the prelims, the early prelims, and additional footage and whatever, so it is worth having UFC Fight Pass if you're into MMA. So I have technically three subscriptions, because then I have Virgin Media Cable as well. But they black it out on UFC Fight Pass because it's available on BT Sport. But bearing in mind it's an American show, it's on at 4 a.m. here. I'm not staying up every weekend until 4 a.m. just to watch a fight. I'll watch it on Sunday. But BT Sport don't bother uploading it to their app until Sunday night, Monday night sometimes. It's all over the place. And what makes it even worse, if you go on the BT Sport app and then click on UFC, they show you highlight clips of the night before they've uploaded the main event. They're uploading highlight clips showing the winners, and there's a guy with his hand in the air or whatever, so it's just full of spoilers. So there are times where I will load the BT Sport app and I'll see a spoiler and I'm like, right, thanks, shit for brains, now I'm going to go and pirate it because I don't want to know the rest of the winners. So there are things like that where I think for me piracy is a godsend, because even though I'm paying for the products, I refuse to get all these spoilers and have to wait extra long. It's easier and quicker to pirate UFC than it is to pay for it and watch it legitimately. And to me, that's utterly backwards, and I have complained to both UFC and BT Sport about that, and until they do something about it, I'm going to carry on doing that every now and then. Sometimes we don't need to, but yeah, there we go. So that's my rant on piracy. Now, back to music production piracy. How does it affect the industry? So I'd love to tell you it doesn't affect the industry, but it absolutely does affect the industry. And I can also say that when I was running a record label, piracy was a big issue. And I will also tell you right now, anybody who claims piracy helps promote the artist, the product, the whatever, from my anecdotal experience, is bullshit. Because the reality was, when I was running a record label, the highest pirated music was the lowest selling music. It was as simple as that. So I genuinely feel like, for at least for my catchment of people, it was true that because I towards the end of running the label, I had one of those DMCA companies that basically put all the takedown notices and try and block the pirates and whatever, and they give you a report every month on how many blocks there were and whatever, and how many takedown notices and all of that. And every single time, if you compared it to actual sales numbers on, say, Beatport or whatever, correlated perfectly every time. The higher the piracy, the lower the sales. The higher the sales, the lower the piracy. That's just how it was. So I feel like it was probably similar to my situation with the UFC. Maybe, I don't know, but it felt like if it was available on pirate sites first, sales were going to really plummet. And we weren't talking huge sales anyway towards the end of running the label anyway. It wasn't life-changing money, but I feel like if you were to add all that up amongst the number of record labels out there and the number of DJs and the number of people who listen to this stuff, I mean, it's a crazy amount of money that the industry is losing as a whole. Individually, it might not be substantial numbers, but collectively, they're huge numbers, and I think they're undeniable as well. So I'm kind of torn, because there's one part of me that goes, it's going to happen, we can't stop it, but at the same time, I don't think we should be that flippant either. I think I don't know, but I don't know what the solution is either. So that makes it extra tricky. But then I guess with stuff like subscription-based stuff like Spotify and iTunes, the Apple Music, whatever it is, I guess you're kind of eradicating the difficulty of things, because it's so easy to have a Spotify, and it's easy to have a free Spotify account as well. So hopefully that will cut down a lot on things like piracy. And again, I know, the royalties are not huge individually for Spotify, but collectively it's getting there. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tricky one, and I don't know what the answer is. I also struggle, and I'm sure all of you are the same, especially because, let's face it, 99% of you guys watching this music producers. I think we all struggle with everything going subscription based now. So for example, to get UFC, I'm paying for Virgin Media, BT Sport, and UFC Fight Pass, and there's 3 subscriptions there. So that's on top of my Netflix and my Amazon Prime and my Now TV and my Spotify and whatever else. We have so many subscriptions now, they're coming out our ass, and I think we're spending far more money than we ever anticipated on media in general. So while a lot of that is sort of combating piracy, I think also it's got to get to a point at some point where we're all going to go, hang on, we just can't afford any more subscriptions. So I think that's a bit of a tricky one. I can see my camera's coming up to time, so I'm just going to hit reset, and I'll see you in a second. Okay. Ricky John, Arena, high five. Cheers to another good couple of rants. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see you enjoyed the show. Not that there was ever any doubt. So that's the Chemical Brothers show I went to see. There really is something magical about that theme and a lot of these soundtrack scores. Not sure why, but they certainly can evoke an emotional response more often than other styles of music, in me at least. So that was when I was talking about the BBC Blue Planet 2 theme tune. On that note, I'm not sure if we've asked you before, but what is your absolute favourite theme or soundtrack, if you have just one? I think I have been asked this before on the AMAs, but I will answer it again either way. I don't have one specific theme, because I think there are so many great soundtracks, but ones that jump to mind, in fact the first one that jumps to mind, which is the one I'm pretty sure I kind of landed on half-heartedly last time, is Interstellar. I love the juxtaposition of the fact that it's a sci-fi film and futuristic and tech and dystopian, and yet the soundtrack is beautiful, organic, natural organs, and I just think that's just such a dichotomy, I suppose. It works. It's great. Others that jump to mind, Clockwork Orange. Don't know why that jumps to mind, but it does. Clockwork Orange, I mean, I know it's a lot of Beethoven, but what was her name? Wendy... Oh, I can't remember the surname, but a huge, legendary icon of synthesizers. Wendy... It's escaped me now. I feel bad for that. But yeah, she was a fantastic synthesist. What else soundtrack wise? Oh, I think I've mentioned this as well. The Netflix film Annihilation. The soundtrack to that, great soundtrack, but especially for the key moment in the film. I'm not giving anything away, but the key moment in the film, and anyone who has seen that film will probably know the sound I'm talking about. There was a sound that occurs repetitively during a key moment of the film, and that sound just goes right through me. It's part of the soundtrack. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's part of the soundtrack. It's not. It's barely even. It's not a melody, but it's just a thing that occurs. And yeah, if you haven't seen Annihilation and you've got a Netflix account, go watch Annihilation. It's a good film, really good film. Yeah, so I would say probably that. Obviously the. Yeah, see, and now I've got a million scores. I mean, that's without. I was going to say without mentioning Hans Zimmer, but of course he did Interstellar. So I have mentioned Hans Zimmer. So there we go. Yeah, I did. There's too many soundtracks to mention. Yeah, so I don't have just one. Sorry. Florian Kettenbach. Arena, high five. Hey Dom, music-related podcasts are great. Do you know about the Mr. Bill podcast? He released some music on Mousetrap and once collaborated with deadmau5 and has recently started a podcast series. I'm very well aware of Mr. Bill. I don't know him, but he seems like an awesome dude. I didn't know he did a podcast. I've seen a couple of his videos banded around on my YouTube, and I have watched a couple of that, and I did a podcast series that unfortunately finished, but mine never got released, but there is a Mr. Bill one, and yeah, that was very interesting. Like I say, seems like a nice guy. Listening to yours now, also to Mr. Bill's, has given me a better understanding of a musician's life and also revealed the secret that you struggle with similar ideas and problems just like someone before his career. Well, that's good to know, because that's kind of what these AMAs are all about, is I guess showing you the reality of being a music producer, because we see we see people like David Guetta, or God, I can't even remember his name. What's his name? Easy come, easy go. Well, there we go. That answers that. Whatever, the rich and famous celebrity DJ producer people that we see that are signed to major record labels, they're all the same. We see them taking private jets and living the high life, and yeah, that's possible. I guess it's a dream of any music producer. It's not, however, the reality for the vast majority of music producers. Much like if you're a footballer, you can be a professional footballer and earn a good living without ever becoming one of those crazy money, whatever, Premier Leaguers. So I think, I think part of this AMA is kind of somewhat portraying that I'm a family man in a family home, and I live what I think is a comfortable life. But at the same time, I could probably, with my education and whatever, I could probably go and work for some big corporate and earn way more than I do now. But it's not about the money; it's about the enjoyment, and it's about finding that balance. So I'm glad that that's got through to you, because I feel like that's That's really important, and I feel like that's almost an unwritten message of all these AMAs. Now you mention it. So there we go. I guess all in all, this is a way of saying thank you for doing this series, and also I would like to know your opinion on Mr. Bill's podcast if you have any. So I haven't heard his podcast, but that's because I didn't know he did one. So what I'm going to do, actually, because you know what, I need to start doing this more often with you guys, because you mention stuff and then I finish the recording and then I end up then having to obviously edit this and put all the the bits of the video together and export it and upload it and whatever, and then I forget everything that I've talked about. So we are looking for Mr. Bill. Is it going to be searchable just as Mr. Bill? The Mr. Bill podcast. I feel like that's probably his. Subscribe. There we go. It's done. So thank you very much for that. If you guys have other podcasts, I think I've mentioned before that I subscribe to a fair few podcasts, but in fact, yeah, it was last week, I think, wasn't it? I mentioned the Chris Moyles podcast is the one I actually listen to the most, weirdly. But yeah, so yeah, if you've got suggestions, chuck them in and I'll try and do that. Francesco Di Carlo. And you're welcome, Florian. So there we go. You don't need to thank me though. Francesco Di Carlo. Thanks, Tom. Have a great weekend and enjoy Chemical Brothers. Then please tell us something back about the gig. I feel like that should have been on last week's video. I think you may have put that on the wrong video. I did enjoy Chemical Brothers, and no, hang on. When did I see Chemical Brothers? Was it last week? I can't even remember now. Wait, because I know I've spoken to the Facebook group and posted some videos there. Oh man, mind blank. Okay, so if I haven't done an AMA since Chemical Brothers, it was amazing. It was proper. I haven't spoken to it. Right, this is weird because I feel like I did an AMA after Chemical Brothers, but of course I did it in the morning of Chemical Brothers. So, house admin, I went to a Chemical Brothers gig last week, and yeah, it was incredible. It was Manchester Arena, and yeah, it was just proper good music, a proper rave. Yeah, amazing. So there we go. If you are able to go and get Chemical Brothers tickets, I highly recommend it. Obviously, me being me, I've been to a lot of gigs in my time, and you know what, I'm never really into big showy shows. I see the videos and I think, oh, that's cool, that's great. As a technological feat, that's great. As a music fan, it's not my thing necessarily. I don't know. I don't know why. It's just I kind of feel like it's similar to when I was DJing a lot, and I remember there were some clubs, especially in Eastern Europe, a lot of clubs there would bring out like half naked women onto the stage in the middle of your set, and I always felt very uncomfortable with that because I was there for a music show and I was playing music, and I'd just managed to get the crowd into a bit of a frenzy, and I'd managed to sort of get the right tracks in the right place, and everything was just starting to sort of build a mood or an emotion, and then a load of naked women would come out on stage and everyone on the dance floor would just sort of stop dancing and just stare at boobs. And as a DJ, you're looking at the crowd 1 minute and they're dancing, they're really intense, they're getting sweaty and they're having a good time, and then you sort of look down and you look up again and they're all stopped and they're just googling. And I always kind of felt like, oh, that's just pissed all over my set. Now, I'm not suggesting that these big shows are anything like that necessarily, but for me as a musician, I kind of want the show to be all about the music. Anyway, there's a huge visual element to the Chemical Brothers show, and I feel like they've really nailed it because they've not gone overboard with giant structures of any one specific type, but at the same time they've not dialed it down too much where it's just like, oh, that's a bit boring or whatever. I just felt like they've got a great mix, and I guess lighting these days is coming on leaps and bounds. So yeah. Anyway, whatever. Great gig. That's the end of that. Med K. Hi Dom. Hive. High five. I think that's an old Hive, isn't it? Have you ever thought about making your own record label? Funny you mentioned that. So I was talking earlier on about when I used to run a record label and I stopped it. I don't even know when I stopped it, years ago. This week, funnily enough, I've been kind of thinking about maybe starting one up again. But with a very specific angle of it being for musical music. So I think, the vast majority of record labels, they kind of just want big hitters, and I kind of feel like maybe now's a good time to start a record label that isn't about big hitters. It's about quality music that's got an artistic twist. So yeah, maybe we'll see. I don't know. It's got a. I think it needs to be self-perpetuating these days. So, for example, I would probably want, if I was going to set up a record label, I would set it up where it was better than 50-50 for the artist. And I would want it to be a good standardised contract with set time limits. And I would want most of the accounting to be automated. So it would be like a PayPal system that's automatically done, or something along those lines. I feel like, I struggled when I was running a record label, and I was working with 2 other people running that label, and I think we always sort of struggled in getting all the admin done, and it was just a bit of a pain in the ass, and that's what I wouldn't want. And I remember thinking, at the time especially, I felt like as a music producer I was almost competing with my own productions were competing with my own record labels, and I always felt like there's a bit of a battle there. Whereas these days, personally, I'm not so fussed on releasing music so often. I'm not in that sector where I have to release new music all the time. As I'm sure you guys know, if any of you listen to my music, I only release once or twice a year. It's not a big deal anymore. So I feel like maybe now running a record label, I might be in a slightly better position. I don't know, but yeah, it's a conversation I'm having with myself at the minute. So there we go. Cavalcade. Cheers, Dom. You can't beat a good rant. Arena. High five. Blue Planet. In fact, yeah, Arena being the key word. I didn't talk about Chemical Brothers. I haven't done an AMA since. Man, my brain is terrible. Blue Planet 2 theme is a masterpiece, and the score as a whole. We don't need to go into Zimmer's mastery of the emotive, but with Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, Jacob Shee, and David Fleming as well. It's a composition dream team on that score. 100%, yeah. No wonder it hits us in the solar plexus every time. For me, part of what makes it so interesting is the orchestral swarm concept that Shee and Fleming used to represent the fluidity of the ocean. Yes, there was a video, I think, I watched, or it might have been a radio program, and they were talking about the instrumentation and arrangement of that score representing different elements of the ocean, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why it sort of bangs me in the chest, because it just hits it. The composition was touched on in this video. Oh, there we go, you've linked a video. It might have been that. And your reaction isn't weird at all. For me, there are a few pieces that get me like that, but strongest involuntary reaction is Niels Frahm says, yeah, that's a good one as well. I managed to keep a lid on it in public, but if I listen on my own, my eyes get all teary and have some weird, shaky, breathless, euphoric reaction that my wife finds hilarious. Yeah, I don't know if my wife has seen my reaction. She'd probably laugh at me, yeah. Seeing Niels perform that piece live was a challenge. Lucky the room was dark. Yeah, I remember, what was it? I saw Pink Floyd live doing The Wall in Wembley Stadium. And there was a couple of songs that I share the passion for with my sister, and I rang my sister during it, and I could not stop choking. Seeing Niels perform that piece live was a challenge. Luckily, the room was dark. I frequently get goosebumps from other tracks. No narcotics involved. It's always been that way. Good. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Question time. Now you've seen Chemical Brothers live, who's still on your live show bucket list? Daft Punk are on there. I never saw Daft Punk live, and I guess I never will. Well, I don't know. Maybe I said that about Kraftwerk and Pink Floyd, and I've seen both of those now. So Daft Punk are on the list. Aside from that, I think that might be it in terms of bucket list stuff. I've been very fortunate. Like I say, obviously being a musician my entire life, I've been to a lot of gigs. Yeah, I can't think. There's no one jumping to mind. I think there are lots of artists I would like to see live, but I don't know if they're necessarily bucket list jobs. Yeah, there's nothing jumping out. That's quite scary. So yeah, I've definitely ticked off most of the bucket list. I'm a very, very lucky person. Dreamstate 42. Hey Dom, very interesting rants. Thanks for that. It was also great to see that little devious twinkle in your eye when you thought about comparing the performance of Bitwig and Ableton in terms of performance. I'm currently testing out the 3.1 beta of Bitwig. Did you get a chance to have a look by now? No, I still haven't. I'm still, as I mentioned in house admin, I'm still struggling to install some software and getting everything up and running. I've sort of spent the last week mostly just trying to catch up with projects, and I had a couple of projects that I was doing for Universal, so I've had to sort of get everything installed from those projects to be able to open up the projects and find the missing samples and whatever. So it's kind of been a bit of a nightmare every time I open an old, I mean we're talking a month old project. It's all missing samples or VSTs or whatever. There's something in there that I haven't installed or is now installed in a slightly different location. So I just kind of figured that the Bitwig beta 3.1 could wait, because I just didn't want that to be spitting up errors while I'm also struggling to find anything else. So yeah, so that was my view on the Bitwig beta. Just bad timing for me. So I've not excuse me, I've not looked at it, and nor do I intend to anytime real soon, if I'm honest. I love some of the features. Note Chase, finally. But I'm wondering a little bit about the direction they take with the focus on pitch. I was expecting something more mainstream after the grid, but oh well. So yeah, I saw the video on the micro expressions of pitch and stuff. You know what? I think that's pretty huge, but until we start using it won't seem so huge. So I have always, anyone who's watched my tutorials and stuff will know that I always talk about this sort of human element to the music, whether that be in pitch or timing or shuffle or notation. And what I'm talking about is leaving in those little mistakes. And so, for example, with using outboard gear, whether it be analog or digital, makes no difference, but using that outboard gear and recording something physically through wires, sometimes you might get a bit of a click at the beginning of a note, or sometimes the release doesn't quite, something sticks, or if you're playing it by hand, it's never going to be perfectly in time. Even if you quantize the start position of your notes so that they're on time, the end position of your notes are not going to be perfectly in time. And those are the things that make a human sound human. Those are the things that make a good quality sounding band. Those are the things that we're used to hearing. So if you allow micro pitches to drift ever so slightly and maybe put them on a randomized but slow LFO, I feel like there's a lot we can do there and really start to make things expressive. So I think it's probably bigger than we think. But it's a case of how you use it, I suppose. Yeah, but as for being mainstream, I honestly don't know. I can't really remember what the list of features were. I guess it must be somewhat significant to warrant a 3.1 rather than 3.0.1 or whatever. But again, I would say a version 3 to version 4 upgrade will be a significant, there'll be new whatever compressors or a whole new host of effects or something like the grid, and I think that's when we expect something like the grid is with a big number change. So that's my perspective. I kind of feel like this is remember, this is only a 3.1 update. It's only a 0.1 difference. So for me, I wouldn't expect it to be anything groundbreaking or whatever. I would just expect some cool new little bits. That's my view. Also, the other thing I always have to keep pointing out to people, and I'm not doing this to you necessarily, but more to the people that sort of bitch and moan about these things. But I always sort of go, well, what do you want? What's next? Because it's like with the mobile phones these days. If you've got the iPhone 8, 9, 10, what's next? What's the next big feature? Like, obviously we want better processor, better RAM, better camera, better screen, bigger screen, smaller screen. What do you want? Do you know what I mean? Whereas, like, if you go back to like the iPhone 3G to the iPhone 4, I think it was, where suddenly you had GPS and everyone was like, whoa, you got a compass, and wow, we can use maps. And then the whole idea of using your phone as a sat nav became this turn by turn sat nav. No way, that's insane. These new technologies progressed, but now we have all of that, and we're up to whatever it is, iPhone 11 or whatever. I don't know, I'm a Samsung user, but we're now, people are starting to bitch and moan about the latest iPhone. Oh, there's not much of an update. Well, what do you want? What do you want it to do? What should it do? I don't know. So yeah, I'm not saying that about you with this, but yeah, I just feel like, so I'm okay with the 3.1 thing. Basically, I've lost your comment now. Oh, there it is. So yeah, as for reactions to music, I'm with you on that. Just the other day, I stumbled upon the Destiny 2 soundtrack while cleaning up my hard drive, and one of the songs, Journey, is almost instantly making me cry. Apparently slow, string heavy chord progressions in G minor do the trick for me. Nice. I'm on macOS myself, so I see your beef with Apple in regards to their prices. On the other hand, I think running a single system for 11 years is something in itself, and of course at some point you're locked in with hard and software, which makes transitioning to state-of-the-art system extra expensive. Yes, and this is one of the things I've talked about a lot with Apple, not necessarily on these videos, but in general in life. I fully accept that holding on to that computer for 11 years was going to cause issues. I accept that. But I think the problem is that most new hardware from Apple will not last 11 years. And I think that's kind of the point, especially when they keep changing peripherals and stuff like that. 11 years ago, we had FireWire 800, I think. It might have been 400, but we had FireWire and USB 2, and that was kind of it. And then obviously everything got faster. SSDs came out, great, I can stick that in. Better graphics cards, great, I can stick that in. It wasn't a game changer. And then they started changing to Thunderbolt, and then Thunderbolt 2 was a different socket or different plug, I think. And then Thunderbolt 3 is basically a lightning connector. And then you've got USB 3.1 or whatever it is, and everything's just slightly different, and it keeps changing. And then so you get to a point where not only that, they made it where I had an iMac 11 years ago or so, that if I wanted to upgrade the hard drive or the RAM or whatever, I could do it. It was there. But they've made these iMacs are so super thin that you now can't change the hard drives out or anything like that. And they've removed a load of peripherals, and I kind of feel like, well, you're now locking everything in and making things so small that we don't need it to be that small. I don't need my iMac to be that thin. And the new ones I think are even thinner again. I think they're bezel-less, aren't they? And it's getting to a point where everything's just getting locked in, and not only that, it's also becoming disposable as well, and that's where my issue lies. And then also, again, in the old days of Apple, there was never any question of software being upgraded beyond the life of hardware. It just wasn't a big deal. Whereas with the Mac Pro, that should have and could have, I'm sure, easily upgraded beyond El Capitan. And even if it had missing features, for example, FaceTime and whatever, I didn't use that, so I would have been okay with that. But they just seem to just sort of shut these things off and then go, no, that's too old, be gone with you. So yeah, anyway, I'm not getting into an Apple rant right now. Let's at least have 1 week off. So transitioning to state-of-the-art system, extra expensive. I 100% agree that it's partially my own fault in that I held on to that system for so long, and all the peripherals got updated around it. So it is what it is, I guess. Sorry for my rant this time. Arena, high five, and have a great weekend and a great time with Chemical Brothers. Thank you very much. I did. We're getting there. I feel like it's going to be a long one, this one. I'm going to have to reset the camera again. I'll see you in a second. And I'm back. We're getting there. Deadly Custard. You think you know someone, then they drop a Chris Moyles bombshell and the world shifts. Yeah. You know what? I like... I always rated Chris Moyles as an actual DJ as well, as in a presenter. His presenting style and the fact that he hits the vocal every time when he's introducing a record, and there's a 14-second intro to that record, and he can talk and talk and talk to bang, the vocal comes in, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. So technically speaking, I've always thought Chris Moyles is a superb presenter. He has a skill. Aside from that, I've always liked Monty Python and just the stupid jokes. So I think Chris Moyles kind of appeals to me in that respect. And he hasn't changed at all. So yeah, there we go. With you on Adam Buxton, though. Always enjoy his interviews. Yes, and again, that's kind of where I see my podcast sitting, hopefully, is that they're just kind of random off the cuff chats more than anything. Please check out the Horn Section podcast, which is Alex Horn, his group of musician friends, and a special guest making up songs and playing silly games. Okay, that sounds like one of those things you'll either love or hate, but I am willing to give it a go. What was it called? The Horn with an E section. Let's have a look, because I feel like if they're making up songs and playing silly games, I feel like it's either going to be really silly and therefore I love it, or it's going to be really silly and therefore I hate it. I can see a couple of versions here, 32 episodes, 10 episodes, 10 episodes. Right, go with the one 32, latest update October. Sounds about right. Subscribe. There we go, done. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I'll give these things a go. Like I say, what tends to happen is I don't have much opportunity to actually sit down and listen to stuff. So when I do, it's usually if I'm driving a long journey, or maybe just pottering about somewhere in the house or whatever. So kind of Chris Moyles fills in most of those, and then when I run out of Chris Moyles, I'll go to something like Stuff You Should Know or Adam Buxton or whatever. So who knows when I'll get round to listening to these, but I will get round to listening to them at some point. And FanFan87, Saludon, Arena, high five, Summer, high five, and Hive, high five, and AMA75, no high five word. Possibly. I will watch the others later. Yes, that's not my my first depression. For reacting on my comment 2 weeks ago, I made several ones much worse before, and that's a sickness I regularly have for more than 10 years, so I'm used to that kind of. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's a shame that you're used to it, because nobody should have to be used to it, but I guess that is the way it goes. And I assume many people deal with that sickness. Yes, they do. And on that note, before I read any more, many people do. But something I have to keep pointing out, and I don't think I've mentioned it, and we have touched on these things, these issues in these videos, and I think it's great that we do. Something I keep pointing out is that I have obviously lots of friends that suffer from all sorts of things, from depression to anxiety to you name it. Two of which, though, or only two that I'm aware of, so there could be more, but definitely two that I'm aware of, have, in similar situations, gone to the doctors, been prescribed whatever, some antidepressant pill, and been told, come back in a month. And they've come back in a month and gone, I didn't really like that. For whatever reason, could be different reasons. But they didn't like it. And the doctor's gone, okay, let's try this one. Come back in a month. And they've come back in a month and they've gone, yeah, that one, that made me worse. Or that one, it just didn't do what it was supposed to do. Fine. Let's try this one. Come back in a month. And they've gone, well, that one was not bad, but didn't really do anything. And they've gone, okay, let's try and tweak the dosage. And they've come back in a month. They've gone back. Basically, this has happened maybe 5-6 times. They've adjusted the dosage. They've maybe gone for a combined, combination of maybe 2 different pills, whatever. But the important part to this is that I know 2 people who have found different combinations, I have to admit, for each of them. But both of them have come to me and gone, holy shit, I'm on these whatever tablets now, and it's just made the world of difference. And I want to make that clear to everyone watching this, that anybody who has mental health issues, and we all say you shouldn't go through it alone and blah blah blah, that's fine. But also I think it's important to understand that for at least some people, and I don't know the figures on how many, but at least some people, there is a combination out there. And I think we need to keep going to the doctor and just saying, is there something else I can try? Is there something else? This doesn't work. This does work. Be honest to the doctor. And it's a long-term thing. There is no one magic thing that just fixes everything. But that doesn't mean it's not fixable at all. And that doesn't mean that there isn't a magic combination or whatever. But it's a case of treat yourself as a bit of an experiment. If you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, partner of any sort, family member that you can talk to about these things as well, tell them, I'm going to try these things and I'm going to try and get through it. Help me, because I feel like sometimes you might need somebody nearby to go, actually you were worse this month, or actually you were better this month. Because yes, if you feel better, but sometimes it takes somebody else to compare, how were you this month compared to last month. So if you can do that, do that. But my point being is that science and technology and medicine has come on leaps and bounds in, well, every day. So there's not always an answer. There's no guarantee for an answer out there, but there are people finding answers in medication, and that is a great thing. So, do your best, basically, I guess. No question this week. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to know, engaged artists like you and Matt Lang and Paula Temple are the kind of person I want to be if I achieve to live with my music in the future. Being more than just a music producer, a beat maker, is something that is inspiring and respectable. Well, thank you very much for that. And finally, St. Nicholas Arena, high five. I think that is all the questions for this week. I think we've probably hit about an hour-ish. So, you genuinely do deserve an award for making it this far into the video. And to prove you have made it this far into the video, I'm going to say comment the word boom, because there's a video here that says the Boom Room full show, Mark Rebillet. If you guys have not followed him on YouTube, then it's worth doing that. I'm guessing most of you know who he is. He's that guy that ad-libs everything, and he's now touring the world and doing huge venues and doing amazing things. He seems like a nice guy, so big ups to him. Yeah, that is it for this week. Once again, thank you very much for listening, watching, whatever it is you do, whether you get this. Apologies to anyone that does listen regularly on Spotify. I wish I could automate the releases of these things, but I, for obvious reasons, want these YouTube videos to be a priority, so they go out first, and then I follow up with the Spotify release and iTunes and all of that. But unfortunately, sometimes they get left by the wayside. So sometimes you miss a couple of weeks, and then you'll have 3 or 4 catching up in one day. It's entirely my fault, but tough luck, deal with it. Yeah, I think that's it. So I can't think of anything else I need to mention. I hope everyone has a good weekend, and I'll see you this time next week. Cheers.